Hello, welcome to the April 29th, 2022 Club Cubase live stream. I'm going to do a quick audio test and then we'll go ahead and get started momentarily. Bear with me just a second. Hello, welcome to the April. Okay, my monitoring computer sounds fine. My name is Greg Undo. I will be the host for the live stream today. If you've not attended a live stream before, how it works is you could ask questions in the live chat field, or you could submit questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. And we will try to get through all the questions as completely and succinctly as possible. And when asking questions, realize that my ability to answer questions in real time will be impossible. I will try my best to catch up, but if you have a question and you don't see an immediate response, you may want to just, if we could refrain from asking the same question repeatedly, that would be appreciated. And when asking questions, if you could specify if you're running Cubase 10, 10.5, 11, 12, if you are also which operating system you're using, and if you're running Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, that information will be helpful. After the live stream, we should have several hours afterwards. We'll have an index with all the topics covered in the live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. Since it is the last live stream of the month, we will be doing our Zoom meetup starting in about 2 hours from now. So for those people watching live at 3 p.m. Eastern, we'll go to our Zoom meetup, and it's just a great way to meet other people on the live stream, and it's always just really fascinating discussions. So I kind of look forward to seeing some new faces there. So and people that are kind of loyal attendees. It's always a lot of fun. I really look forward to these every month. And we want to give, if you wanted to search for topics that have been covered in previous live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com and search there. Jan from Stockholm has been kind enough to create that website. Another wonderful resource of Steinberg related information you could find at the Cubase Nation Discord, which Jazz Dude does a lot of work on. And we have two people that serve as moderators. They're not Steinberg employees. They just kind of do this to make it a better community. We want to give special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude for that. So with that, since we have kind of only 2 hours, we'll try to go ahead and get started. And I posted the link for the Zoom meetup, and I'll try to do that every half hour or so. So I see Jan might be on the Zoom already, but we'll get started in about 2 hours. So, all right. Okay, so we have first question, and I'm presenting, before we get started, I'm presenting from Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. area. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. It's always fascinating to see where people join the live stream from. All right, so we have a question from Biominerals. Hi, Greg. How do I set up a key command for bounce audio? So if you wanted to just do bounce like the audio selection, like if I have a bunch of edits here and I wanted to kind of consolidate all of these edits into a new file, and so we could do that by going. It's going to be in the audio menu. We could do it from bounce selection. So if we have a number of files selected here, but let's go find that in the key commands. So if I just wanted to come here, I think we would find it under the audio menu here in key commands. So I just went to edit menu to key commands, and then we could see bounce selection. I think this may be a keyboard shortcut that I put in myself, but you can assign a keyboard shortcut just like that. So if we do a bounce selection command, we can again come right over here. Let's go to the bounce selection, and this will kind of consolidate. We could replace the events. It's going to create a new audio file just like so. So you can do that. Now, if you wanted to export audio, do an export audio mix down. If that's or if you wanted to like bounce all the files down for your mix, let's come over here. And then there's always kind of a search function. So you could just type in export audio, and I think this will be under the file menu. So you could do an export audio mixdown. So you could select that, and that will open up the export audio mixdown dialog. So if we wanted to come directly, so if you wanted to mix everything down to make like a stereo or 5.1, we could just come right over here to your export audio mixdown. So that would be from the file menu. The bounce selection would be found in the audio menu. All right, so we have Brian Grieve Music checking in from Denmark, and thanks for joining us. We have Uno Memento from Finland. All right, we see Jazz Dude on. We have Benny from Sweden. All right, and we have Samson Strike, who seems to be happy with his Nuendo 12 update. All right. All right, so I just see from Dallas LaRue, I was looking for an old song in Cubase 9 and it said it could not be found. I never deleted any. Why would that happen? So generally, like Steinberg, the Cubase won't necessarily delete files. That would be something that's going to be done at kind of the operating system level. The one thing that you might be able to do, Dallas, if you can't find a particular project, is if you go over to Media Bay. So let's say we go to Media Bay here, we could check to see if, and you could just actually look only for projects. And then at that point, you can say, okay, look for every project. So just in case it was moved to a different location, maybe it was a backed up project, you can now just kind of come over here and search for, particular projects in, let's say, okay, I want to go to documents and I'll just choose my projects here. And then I could just kind of rescan the disk, but at this point you could just, search for projects, and see if you could find your project there. But generally, it'd have to be manually deleted kind of through the operating system. So, all right, so you see, Greg, I have a UR24C. Can you give me a little overview, please? Okay, so one of the cool things with the UR24C is you have the built-in ability to come over here. So, one, it's going to be just like, an audio interface, and it has two different outputs, which often kind of could be used for DJ style effects. But I'm just going to switch my outputs to the outputs from the control room. And let's say if I activate direct monitoring, and let's go to my inputs, and let's say I want my mono in 1 coming from my UR24C. Let's see if it's, I'll just do 1 stereo. Okay, and then if I wanted to now add an audio track, so once we have this, you can see the UR24C, and what this is going to allow you to do is you could have your high pass filter. You could also switch to phase, of the left or of the right channel. You could engage phantom power. But once you're also here, we could choose to see inserts. So if you wanted to have like the morphing channel strip, you could have like a built-in EQ that's actually run from DSP on the hardware itself. So if you wanted to track through an EQ or monitor through like a RevX reverb, we could do that as well. And that's going to be powered directly from the hardware. and then you have these as plugins. So this way, it's kind of almost like a digital console in that you could just come over here and have built-in DSP. So you could monitor or record with the morphing channel strip or monitor with reverb without having any latency. Okay, so we see John Costigan on the live stream. From Kenosha, Wisconsin, we see Sir Robert from Atlanta. Okay, so we have a question from Chris Hallam in Columbia, South Carolina. Is there a way to select a folder such that all tracks and the regions contained therein are displayed in a key editor of the lower zones? Let's give it a shot. We might be able to do this with the Project Logical editor. So I'll just switch projects. Okay, so I have these all in a folder. So let's see if we can do this maybe with the Project Logical editor. Okay, so we want to say media type is let's try our container type is equal to all right, and let's say we'll set our property is set to parent object is selected. And let's try select all. Let's see if this will work. I may have some other tracks selected here. Let me just make sure there's nothing. Okay, let's try setting this to event instead. Let me just see if we could okay, so let's just say if I wanted to come here. And I'll just see if these are all showing up in the score editor. So it looks like we could just, let's see what happens when we just double clicking on the folder track itself. We'll do that. So let me just see. I'll just switch this to events, to parts. Okay, and I think you mentioned you want it in the lower zone. All right, so I'm just going to double click here. Okay, so if you, let me just check my preference here really quick. So we could do kind of a key command and then bring it down to the lower zone like that. Let me see if I have this selected, if it's going to allow me to. So, you know, we could do it like this and then bring it down to the lower zone. Let me know if that works for you, or if you, like while you do that, just try another project logical editor approach. So if we have that selected. Yeah, so if you do this, you could just double click on the folder and then bring everything down, and there's keyboard shortcuts to kind of make it from an independent window. So let me know if that works for you, Chris. But, you know, just taking like a particular folder track and double clicking, so it's not necessarily in the lower zone. But that looks like everything is in there. So let me know if that works for you. All right, so we have Soren from Sweden checking in. All right, so we just see mixer snapshot not working with the Midi mixer. It's only with audio. Can I use it for Midi as well? So let's take a look. Like on this, I have a number of Midi tracks. So let me see if I have them kind of broken out. All right, let me just try with just a couple MIDI tracks that aren't assigned to a particular instrument and see if we can get that. Yeah, so it doesn't look like it works for the MIDI tracks, but if it's an instrument track, so let's say if I just wanted to add number of instrument tracks, we'll see if that works. So we'll update that. So it looks like the instrument tracks do, but MIDI tracks aren't recalled in the snapshot. So sorry about that. All right, we have Tiago checking in from Brazil. All right, so we have Brian Grieve Music says still on 9.5, gonna update soon. So yeah, there's lots of great new features. We also see Stefan from Sweden, Matt Elston from London. Okay, so we see from Soren, Greg, apparently there's a known issue with the transpose track for chord track that plays cycled. The transpose does not hold on second cycle. Is there something to comment from you on that? So let's go ahead and take a look. Okay, so let's say if we have this going. Oh. Let me just get back to my audio connection. Sorry about that. So we'll just put that in a loop. So let's see if it. All right, so let me just make sure I'm reading the question right. Okay, so let's say, I'm not sure if it's, let's try just setting this up. So let's say we're going to transpose now. Sorry, let me just unmute. All right, so say this is our first time, so it's going to transpose our chord track going from C to B flat, to E flat, to F, to G minor. So it seems like that is so if I wanted to go up 2, so we'll go through 2 cycles here. And we'll see if it stays at the same pitch. And then we'll go to 0, back to our original, and we'll go through 2 times. So it seems like the transpose track is working with the chord track when it's cycled to me. Let me know if it's behaving differently for you. All right, and we have Ron N checking in from Florida. All right, so it's just the Tiago is just he had an email about renaming the file names of all audio files through through like a Project Logical editor. So I don't think that the Project Logical editor, and sorry if I misunderstood your question from earlier, but I know, let's see, if we come here, like if you want to put like the name, like prepend the name of the audio files as opposed to the tracks, I'll give that a try again with the Project Logical editor. I know Nuendo has like specific like renaming functionalities for audio events. So let's say if I wanted to record a number of tracks here. All right, so we have all these, and let's say if I wanted to prepend the name of the file, so I'm not sure if we could do that in the Project Logical editor. I know it's one of the things that can be done in Cubase, but we'll give it a shot here. So if you wanted to, so I think the file name is still going to be, looks to be the same. We could change the description, but I think in Nuendo that there is a way when you go to the export audio mixdown, that there's kind of a naming scheme. So you could apply like free text during the export audio mixdown, and in Nuendo it's going to be in, within the project there's an edit rename functionality, but I don't think that Cubase offers this for renaming. This is where you would see just a quick renaming of events in Nuendo. It's often kind of really critical for game development. But I don't think that there's kind of the exact equivalent other than maybe doing a batch export. Sorry about that, Tiago, my misunderstanding. All right, we see Benny's happy with his Nuendo 12. And we have Jahari Studios checking in from Ghana. Thanks for being a part of the live stream today. All right, so we have a quick question. Is there a way to quantize pitches using a Midi file in VariAudio? Can I use Midi as a reference? But it'd be nice to be able to quantize. So let's take a quick look. All right, so if I've made a chord track based on like the piano here, so let's say if I wanted to now come over to my chord track and let's say create chord events. And now when I go to, let's say VariAudio here, so we're taking that Midi track as the basis. So we'll go to VariAudio. And now we could use the chord track as the scale assistant, and we could choose to quantize pitches based on the chord track here. So, and that chord track is derived from the Midi part itself. So you could, it's not where it has to be a fixed key. So you could just drag that over. It'll do the analysis of the chords. And then at that point, use that in the VariAudio editor as the basis for the editing. You want to just simply use the chord track as the basis and then quantize the pitch. All right, we see a question. Hi, Greg. Is it possible to start a project in Cubase and then transfer it later to Cubasis? I think that you could take different parts of it, but there's going to be features in Cubase that aren't available in Cubasis, whereas Cubasis will. You could take a Cubasis project and import it, but if it's just kind of importing MIDI files or just having some time-stamped WAV files. At that point, you could just kind of, load those into Cubasis, but it's not really intended to load a Cubase project, but most of the people would use it. The intention being of taking a Cubasis project, and if they need, for starting an idea, perhaps when you're not at the studio, and then at that point, taking into Cubase and finish it if needed. All right, so we have Razel checking in from Denmark, and we have Luca checking in from Munich. All right, so we have a question. What is the difference between rendering and bouncing a track? All right, so often bouncing a track is, let's say if I've had a number of different edits here, and when you bounce a track, like if I wanted to consolidate and make, what was maybe a whole bunch of edits into a brand new audio file, at that point we could bounce selection and it's going to create a particular audio file. So, and it's going to create a new audio file. So if I don't want to worry about, if I'm passing on to someone else and I don't want to worry about the file actually, like having 3 files instead of 1, we could do that, but it doesn't include any processing. When we want to include processing, such as the effects and EQs, or working with our, like MIDI information that we wanted to turn into audio. So if we have a number of processing going on, when we render that processing, when we come over here, we can say, okay, let's do a render in place, and we'll go to our render settings. We could choose to include or exclude all of the various processing options. So you can say channel settings, which is EQ, inserts channel strip, or send effects, or working with the master effects as well. So at that point, you could, so the rendering will often include the ability to have the processing, whereas bounce selection is just going to have kind of the raw files without any processing applied to it. Okay, so we see Tullamore Studios checking in from Belgium. And we have Camille checking in from the Czech Republic. All right. So we see question, do I use the control room? I use a UR24C and Cubase Pro 12 in a home studio. You could definitely use the control room. Currently with the UR24C, as you're working with the control room, and if you want it to have, you know, the onboard, the real-time DSP processing as part of your tracking process as you're recording, then I would bypass the control room for recording and then maybe use the actual, use the actual files, while mixing, switch over to using control room because there's a lot of great features that could offer you. All right, we have a question. Can you please explain pan law in a bit of an elaborate manner, whether it applies to a stereo or a mono track? So generally it's going to be, I think it could be applied to either. And it's just going to be like, how does the panning sound audibly? So let's say if I wanted to come over to, let's just do a new project. All right, and at this point, I'll just I'll do a mono track here, just to make it easier. And I'll just put like a test tone generator, make sure I'll turn the volume down so it's not super annoying. All right, so let's come over here to inserts. All right, so currently when I come over here, we're going to see our, just turn the volume down here so it's less annoying. All right, so let's go to our project setup, and our pan law is currently set to equal power. So let's say I'm going to set this to -6 dB. So as we listen to this, we could kind of, as we do this, like as we pan, you'll just be able to kind of hear the different panning changes. And let's say even now, if we hear how that gets softer as we pan. So you may not see it in the meters, but what it's basically doing is you could choose, because as you combine two different sounds, like a left and right channel together, it could be kind of set up. Let me open the right window. You can kind of manipulate it. So, different consoles would be kind of spread across. So you could say, okay, when we go to our stereo pan law, I think like SSLs were at -4.5 dB, but as you would double a signal, at that point, that's, would do a gain of 3 dB. Like, so if you made something twice as loud, that's 3 dB. So as we combine like the left and right channels, at that point you could, increase the volume by 3 dB, but you may want it to actually be just for like as we're working. So let's come here and try it on the stereo track. So you could, as you pan, you may want it to be equal volume levels, or you may want it to be softer. And that's why you could kind of manipulate the different pan law options. So some people will often adjust the pan law to make their mix sound a little bit wider without doing anything much else. If you have a lot of stuff that's kind of hard panned, then you could actually use the pan law to bring those parts out or make them sit back in the mix. All right, so we see a question, please, how to do a multi-channel drum output with Groove Agent. Okay. All right, so let's say I come back to this project. Okay, so we have all right, so let's say we have this going on. I'll just open this up. All right, so as we're, let's say now, and we can do this in different ways. So if we're in an acoustic agent kit, like when we come to look at an acoustic agent kit, we can go to the mixer, and then I could say, okay, I want it my, let's say I wanted my kick to go out of output 2, my snare out of output 3, hi-hat out of output 4, let's say my room out of output 6, output 5 for overheads. All right, so now when we go to our mix console, we can see that these are all being fed to different outputs. Now, if it is a beat agent kit, kind of more the MPC flavored workflow, anytime that you would select a particular sound, at this point you could choose from the 32 stereo outputs. So let's say if I wanted to, now at this point we have like an event that's now being routed to multiple outputs. So let's say I have a part and I wanted to render this. I think if we just come over here, let's do a render in place. And I think if we choose channel settings, that we could render, and then it's basically going to take each, like my kick, snare, hi-hat, and break it down into individual tracks. So once we kind of, so we can see the hi-hat, overhead, kicks, etc. So we could just simply break down your different outputs, and then when you render it, you could have everything automatically kind of split out for you on an individual track basis. All right, so we see Benny's telling everyone to hit the like button. And if you learned something new throughout the whole project, you know, just or throughout the session, please feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. We're going to see how we're doing on time. I'm going to go ahead and submit the link for the Zoom meeting. It's going to start in about an hour and 20 minutes. Or we see from Chris Hallam, double clicking on a folder track works great for him, so that's great. My chat field jumped on me, so let me find my spot. All right, so we see Michael Pierce on the live stream. Okay, so we see, hi Greg, question just from Razel. In the sample editor, that snap point S is not there. How can I find it, please? All right, so the trick with this is when we go to the sample editor, let's say we're in the sample editor. So I see the S here. You'll see this little option directly here, enable display mode. So if you're in show clips, and this is in Cubase 12, that's where you could see it. If not, you could come over and you could say show events. And then if you have show events or show clips in events, now you may, in earlier versions, there was like a little icon. It almost looked like a hockey stick that was going up and pointing to the right, and one that was going to the left. So like in 11 and earlier, if you activate that, then you could see the snap points. But in version 12, you just want to make sure that it's set to show clips and events, or show events and not just show clips. So let me know if that helps, Razel. All right, so we have Neil Conway checking in from Arizona. Thanks for joining us. See, Kerwin Young is enjoying all new features with Cubase with his Nuendo 12. That's great. All right, we have Gerald Ely from California. So we see Greg is there, a tool in Cubase that does my programming for me, or that stops time in this earthly realm so that I can enjoy some time in Cubase. So maybe version 13. So we'll have a pause button on life so you could do more music. Seems like a good thing to work for. Okay, so we see from the transpose issue that Soren had raised before, it says 4 bars chord track, not transpose, and another 4 bars chord track cycled, transpose +3, then 4 bars transpose 0. The cycle doesn't hold the transpose. Okay, so let's see if we can create this again. Okay, so we'll give this a try here. Yep, so that seemed to not hold the transposition there. Yeah, so I will mention that and bring it to their attention. So sorry about that. Thanks for letting us know. All right, so we see a question, Greg. Please, how to quantize a guitar solo and correct the wrong notes. All right, so let's see if we can. I think I have a project with a guitar solo in it. It's like I remember guitar solos back in the day. It was the thing that came in between vocals. Yeah. All right, so I have a guitar solo track here. Okay, so let's say as we're all right, so let's say, okay, we have this guitar solo. So one of the things that you could do is, just kind of come over here and let's say, okay, we have hit points. Okay, and we could adjust kind of the threshold for hit points so that it looks like we're catching most of the particular notes. And then at this point, if you wanted to quantize it, we could just, if we go to the Quantize panel, we could at this point just kind of choose to quantize, but if we have the Quantize panel open, we could just simply kind of go to edit to the Quantize panel. You could put in kind of, so say if you wanted to be like 16th notes, and you could enable audio warp and choose to quantize the audio. But a lot of times what's really helpful, and especially, is the ability to, as we're in the sample editor, to just come over here to free warp, because you may just have like particular notes that are early or late. So let's say if we go to audio warp and enable free warp at this point in the sample editor, we could just simply say, oh, this note was a little early, this is late here, and then you could just kind of slip the particular notes rhythmically in time. And if you have Cubase 12, we could just go to our free warp tool. So as we go to free warp now, we could just simply come right over here and fix different rhythmic anomalies like that. And if you wanted to just kind of put in a warp marker at a specific point, we could just say, okay, I just want to take that warp marker, I want to add one there that was a little early, a little late, and then you could freely kind of move them around. All right, so we see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas joining, and he's starting with the virtual ice cream. So we just see from Craig just saying, is there a way to auto color tracks based on the folder track color in which they are placed? All right, so let's say I'll just do a new project here. Okay, so I'll add a folder track. And let's add a number of audio tracks here. Okay, so if I wanted to, so I don't know if there's a way to, like, as the track is placed into the folder automatically, to change it, but you can change them all kind of at one time just by selecting this and choosing your colors like that. But I think if this is like one track is outside of the folder and it is a different color, that dropping it into folder, I don't think will automatically change the particular color. And a lot of people wouldn't necessarily want the color to be the same, so that all, because you may have different colors within a particular folder. But if you wanted to just simply come over here and, you could colorize the parts pretty easily, but a lot of times people may want different colors within folders as well. So we don't want to assume that action, but maybe it'll be set up as a preference in the future. All right, great to see Mandy Lane on the live stream. I think it's been a while for Mandy, so great to see you back. All right, so we just see, Greg, I would like to know how to add Waves plugins properly, EQ together, compressor together, etc. So I'm still waiting on my Waves update code from, I think, 2002. So I don't really know Waves plugins well. I'm waiting for support to get back to me on that. So maybe if you check with the Waves live stream, they might be able to help you with that, but I don't really use the Waves plugins. So, But, there's probably just going to be, very equivalent plugin versions for most of the stuff, and to get started, I would definitely check out the channel strip that you have in Cubase, because you'll have, multiple compression. You have your EQ. If you're doing vocals, you could have a de-esser, or drums, you could use like an envelope shaper, plus different saturation options, different limiters that you could just simply come right over here. You could change the signal flow order of those, and there's different presets as well for all of the channel strip functions as well. So I would kind of start there, and if you need to go further and have different flavors, you can as well. So okay, Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button. All right, so we have Nick joining the live stream. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we see from Michael Teams, how about doing a groove agent kit? I still don't grasp setting up to the channels. Okay. All right, so if we're starting with, let's say, just gonna jump here real quick. And I'll revert this. Okay, so let's say if we're just starting off, so there's basically two different styles of drum kits in Groove Agent. So you'll have an acoustic agent, which is going to be almost like a virtual drummer. So when we come over here, we could see kind of like a drum kit that will be set up. And another type of drum kit that you're going to have is going to be more like MPC style. So we could just come over here. Don't know why I panned those. All right, and these will each have like 32 different channels to work with. Now the mixers will vary slightly. So when we want to come over here to the mixer, for an acoustic agent, this will be very much kind of like an analog console. So when we want to go to the mixer, we could switch between patterns. So if we're playing a particular pattern, I could just hit play. And as we're kind of playing this, right now, everything is kind of generally going out of the kit mix. So we look at our mix console. Everything's going to be coming out of basically one stereo output, and it's going to be mixed together. But we all know at times you may want to have, and if you wanted to mix internally, it's pretty easy to do inside of Cubase. So if I wanted to come over here and let's say, okay, I have a reverb, and I put that on aux send 1, I can now go to here and I could add reverb. And then each of these channels, I could also apply EQ, compression. So if I say, okay, I just really wanted to have compression turned on. Or if I want to do tape saturation or an envelope shaper. So I could take like my kick, and let's say I want to go to the snare here. So now I have this selected and I wanted to adjust the length, or for that to be really tight. So if I wanted it to be, so you could do just a tremendous amount of, okay, now I just want to go to tape saturation. So, and you could do 2-stage, like running it through 2 tape machines. So we could have all of those internal mixing capabilities. So, and then if we wanted to combine those with the capabilities of the mixer, we could now just come directly to the top here. And at that point, we could just say this is going to output 2. And my hi-hat will go to output 3. Let's say output 4 is going to be overheads, and output 5. So now as we play, everything is now coming into separate outputs here. And if I wanted to EQ the snare differently, or run it through additional Cubase plugins, we have that capability as well. So, and again, we can have up to 32 stereo outs per instance going directly into the Cubase mixer. So let me know if that helps, Michael. All right, so we see Best Korean Jesus says hit the thumbs up button. All right, we have Jeff Zabelski from Chico, California. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see Taxi Williams Music says, hi Greg, Cubase 12 is still crashing when I disable tracks. Someone in the Facebook group suggested I should disable hyper threading, but I don't know the steps to do so. So generally, I think that's going to be handled in the BIOS. Like, you know, when you start up your PC, you could hit like F2 or delete, F2 or delete. So you could definitely, and I think if you go into your BIOS that you could disable hyper threading there. So. All right, so we just see, is there a key command for changing focus when multiple panels are open? So I think if we just wanted to, there may be one under, let's say, maybe under the Windows category. Let's see if there's a... All right, so like as you kind of go through, you know, there are a lot of the different, you know, different aspects will have, you know, keyboard shortcuts just to open and close windows. You could come over here and save workspaces. So if you say, okay, I just wanted to, once I have a particular window set up, you could save it as a workspace. And let me just see if there's like, even if we're in, all right, so say we're in Cubase here. And I think maybe on Windows that you could like a control tab. Let me just see if it's, to often switch between different windows. I think it's maybe Alt tab that could switch between different window zones, but there doesn't, you know, seem to be, let's say if we come here, so, we could bring different windows to front. So let's see. For a different task. Yeah, there's also kind of the bring to front command, and that often will kind of help with that. So, but definitely kind of investigate working with workspaces as well. Okay, so we have a question from Kevin. How to make a beat or samples, and what is the longest beat you can make in Cubase? So I imagine you could go for months, depending on your computer's memory. So there's no length really to how many beats. Okay, and we see, and also, can you make guitar samples with Cubase? Is there a guitar editor? So if you wanted to sample your guitar, what you could do, a lot of times, let's see if I have a project, like I did sampling on like a 60s jazz bass. Let me see if I have that project here. So yeah. So, and I just wanted to make like a Hallian instrument. So as I did this, I just kind of played each note on my bass. And I did each note on each string. So if I say, okay, let's come over here, I want the A to be on my E string. Instead of an open A, I could come here and I just kind of let the sample go. I could let it go farther if I wanted to. So, but I'm not sure if you wanted to sample your guitar. And obviously when you're sampling guitar, playing it from a MIDI keyboard could come off differently than playing it on your guitar. So if you could let me know, Kevin, what type of guitar editor that you want. So, generally guitar is going to be, recorded as audio. So it's not necessarily a guitar editor, but just the audio editor that will allow you to edit the guitar recordings. All right, so we have a question. How can we download free plugins in Wave from 11? So if you wanted to download like free VST plugins, there's, there's probably tens of thousands of different VST plugins available. All right. So we see just a question. Can you play a live guitar can you play live guitar on your live chat and record it? So yeah, we've done that many times before. I don't really have my audio interface, a cable set up to it that I could get to easily, but yeah, it's no problem recording live guitar. So we just did it a couple weeks ago for some VST Connect. Okay, so we just see, hi Greg, do you have some tips for ceiling speakers for Atmos setup? Love Dynaudio, Genelec, Focal Sound. So obviously once you get into Atmos, you have to kind of, commit to, to do it kind of properly. If you want to get your room certified, I think you need to have, the 12 speakers. Ideally, most people would want to have the same type of speaker configuration so that you don't have different speakers for your surrounds as you do your center channel, as you do your main left and right, as you do top, like your elevation speakers. So what, obviously that gets to be price prohibitive for a lot of people. So, whatever speakers that you could have, I know there's lots of guys that will use JBL systems for that. I'm sure that you could spend a lot of money on Dyne Audio and Genelex and Focals. But it's really kind of a very personal preference, so I've seen people go with, people that have been nominated for Grammys for surround and immersive work go for inexpensive JBLs, sometimes even Yamaha HS5s. And you can get the Yamaha HS series with mounting brackets on it. So some of those, are convenient. But if you wanted to go for a whole kind of Dyne Audio setup, I would try to make it as consistent as possible. Like I have a 5.1 setup with NHT speakers. So, and I like those. I don't have a full Atmos setup with 12 speakers. I just have 6 going on. Okay, so we have a question from David M. Hi, Greg. What is the best way to activate media-based samples to play when it gets disabled for some reason? So, like, if you're looking to audition through MediaBay, you could come over here. So let's say, okay, I just wanted to, audition my different samples. So, because these aren't actually set to a particular track, they're often going to be run through the control room. So if you don't hear anything, make sure that you go to the audio connections and make sure that the control room is active. And then also if you have this set to stop, you could have it in a mode where it's not automatically playing, but maybe it's just the, as we're, but there, as soon as you kind of click on it, you should hear the, the particular sample just kind of play. But if it's not going through MediaBay, you may not hear it. Okay, reading through different comments. All right, so we see from Jeff Sabelski, Greg, hi, on a large orchestral score with contrabass, contra clarinet, tuba, bass trombone, pits, and bow double bass, timpani 2, Nuendo 11, how to best balance the low end, maintaining clarity of all. So while it seems like you want low end, sometimes doing, going to your track and as you're working with it, what you want to do probably is, you could activate kind of just a low cut filter. So, because you may want, often you may have a lot of rumble that's going on. So, but, if there's going to be kind of unnecessary frequencies, try just to come over here and, just do like a low cut filter and, you can kind of find the right frequencies, but there could be just a lot of frequencies that are, and if we wanted to come here, we could just do kind of a low shelf here. And let's say, even from the channel EQ. So let's say, okay, I wanted to adjust. Let's say my gain here. And then you could choose to say, okay, let's just cut out particular frequencies. So if you wanted to do just a high pass filter, you could adjust the, so, don't be afraid to, even if, A lot of people may put like kind of these filters on, bass tracks all the time just to give it a little more clarity. So definitely experiment with that. See David Belos, also he's loving his JBLs. Okay, so we see Greg, without samples of a MIDI bass trombone, is it best to use to transpose down 12 from Iconica trombone, for example, or use a sampler track? If it's an audio file, you help me find bass drum. So a lot of times I don't think bass trombone is exactly an octave lower. I think it just has an extended range. So I don't think I could be mistaken because I haven't played in like orchestras since college, and it's been way too many years. But you may find that it's just gives you an additional range, kind of like almost like a 5-string bass, I think is how it works. I had a friend in high school that was like, he kind of specialized more in bass trombone than trombone, like for auditioning for all-state band and stuff like that. So. But I don't think it's necessarily an octave lower. I think it's just, and I'm sure someone could Google it while I'm describing it. All right, so we see Greg, can you please advise me monitors for my home studio, please? I don't really know what the size of your room is, kind of what your budget is. I think that, for a good overall monitor that doesn't break the bank, and I've known people that have sold much more expensive monitors like the HS7 from Yamaha I really like, and it's kind of a workhorse monitor, and I know people that have sold more expensive monitors and found that those translated really well. If you don't have a big room, maybe like an HS5, but there's lots of different options. But the Yamaha HS7 is, the HS series, sells incredibly well, so it's very popular. All right. So we see from Kevin, what are the advantages of the Project Logical Editor? Can you have the Project Logical Editor in the channel strip or linked to other plugins? Which plugins works with the Project Logical Editor? So the Project Logical Editor isn't something that's necessarily about plugins or like putting it in the channel strip. What the Project Logical Editor is going to allow you to do is to do kind of like different scenarios. So let's say I wanted to take all of these particular tracks, and there's a number of factory presets to work with. Like I wanted to, take all of my tracks and I wanted to select the ones that started with the letter E, or I wanted to take all these different tracks and colorize them to a particular color. I want to take automation on the track and raise it by a dB or so. So it doesn't integrate with the channel strip or plugins. It's more like I need to do this type of edits on tracks that are kind of defined by these conditions at the top. So it doesn't really, it's more of kind of like a Boolean editor. So if this is, if I have an audio track that is within a folder track that is longer than this, set it to this output. So we could do kind of like if, I wanted to take all tracks that are set up this way, and then I wanted to do something and I wanted to edit something based on that. So it doesn't really integrate with plugins or the channel strip. All right, so we have Michael Pierce's soup selection for today. It's Campbell's Cream of Asparagus. Buy open tin, put in pot, add water, milk to consistency. Want heat and do not boil. All right, sounds good. All right, so we see, does somebody made scripts for controllers not listed? I'm in controller mode, thanks. And this is from Samson Strike. So I think if you go to the Steinberg forum, that there's a place where people are uploading and, and sharing different places where MIDI remote controls have been set up. All right, so we have a question from Gregory Redden. I've inserted a Groove Agent 5 track that has 2 agents loaded, the acoustic and percussion agents. In Cubase, I don't know how to access the percussion agent kit from the drum editor. Okay, so let's come over here. Okay, so every time that you load up a different agent in Groove Agent, so you have, 4 agents that are available. So you'll have, and they'll basically just show up on MIDI channels 1 for agent 1, MIDI channel 2 for agent 2. Agent 3 would be MIDI channels 3, and the 4th agent would be MIDI channel 4. So we'll just get this instrument loaded up. This takes a while to load up for some reason. Bear with me just a second. After the first time I load it, just loads up quickly after that. Okay, so let's say we have acoustic agent here. Okay, so we have, and let's load up on agent 2. And I'll do my percussion agent. Okay, so right now when we go to our Groove Agent track and we have this set to channel 1, we're playing Groove Agent. But if I set it to MIDI channel 2, then all of those notes are being routed to the actual percussion agent. So if you wanted to come here and say, okay, I want it to have, you would say we have a part here, and I will just have a drum map kind of created automatically from the instrument. So let's say if we double click and we go into our drum editor. So let's say now these are all going to be going out to the actual Groove Agent. But now if I wanted to, just switch this channel to channel 2, at that point, we could have that automatically go directly to percussion agent. So just agent 2 is MIDI channel 2, agent 3 is MIDI channel 3, etc. Okay, so you see question from Tiago. I have a melodic line in a MIDI file, then I recorded me singing that same line. Now I want to correct the pitch and quantize it using Vari Audio and a MIDI file as a reference. In Vari Audio, I see it's possible to use a MIDI file as a visual reference pitch for correcting, which is great, but I want to quantize Vari Audio notes using that MIDI file as reference. And we could just see, and trying to maintain timbre and clarity and mono. Okay, sorry. So it's not going to quantize necessarily to the MIDI reference. And we'll show this feature for someone here quickly. So if we are doing Vari Audio, so we'll just say, okay, let's go to Vari Audio. And we could load up a MIDI reference. Let's say I just wanted to look at the piano. So it's not going to necessarily, if it's just a melodic part, it's not going to automatically kind of map those, the Vari Audio to what was singing, or what was played into MIDI. But, obviously you can see, like, as you would move the note to where the Vari Audio would be, and you could see those notes, under the segments of that, but it's not going to automatically quantize to a MIDI part, and that's why the MIDI track is a reference, just so you can see what notes or chords are often used to that, but it's not going to automatically just kind of match the pitch to the MIDI. But often if you just kind of, unless you're really off, you could often, select all of your sections here, all the different segments, and just kind of, quantize the pitch easily enough like that. And then so you could do that, but it's not going to automatically match the MIDI. All right, so we see Mark Rabin on the live stream from Montana. So I just see, are you a producer? So I used to do production, a lot of production work. Then I got a job that kept me too busy from doing a lot of production work. So I see Jazz Dudes posted the link to the remote control scripts. Okay, so I just see a question from Kevin. What is the advantage of using stereo half inputs versus mono input one, and the difference in stereo in and stereo out? The advantage of using 1 and 2 inputs versus mono input 1 in between stereo in, stereo out. All right, so, if you wanted to record, I know we were talking yesterday, Kevin, but if you wanted to record something like your guitar directly in, or a voice, your voice is coming out of one single source, so often that would be recorded as mono. If you're recording your guitar and it's being run through like an effects processor as part of the processing, so maybe you have a ping pong delay that goes back and forth between the left and right channels. At that point, you may want to take a mono input, and if you're going into a guitar processor, and if you wanted to record the output of the stereo effects on a guitar processor, then record that as stereo into inputs 1 and 2 of your audio interface. All right, so we see Uno Memento has donated a beer to everyone. So sounds like a good thing on a Friday afternoon, Friday night, wherever you're from. All right, we see Marcos Gomez. All right, so we see for Kevin, in Cubase, the control room works way better and easier to use when they have new guitar plugins. Anything in the works? So, we just came out with Cubase 12, so, the VST Amp Rack is still a great choice for, guitar amp needs, and there's lots of people that use that. All right. So we see question from Mark. Not really a Cubase question. Who has done that song "Be Someone" that Greg plays in these sessions? Is this song available on streaming services? So often, it's a song that was composed by Vince Melamed, and you could probably Google him. He's been on some of our Zoom meetups in the past. He also wrote Beatles and Stones and a number of songs I use in my demos, and sometimes. And he's a well-known songwriter who's had plenty of number one hits. And he was based in Nashville. I probably known him 25, 27 years or so, and he's amazing. He's an amazing musician and great songwriter. So sometimes when he has projects that didn't get picked up by artists, he'll let me use those as demos. So I don't think it's available, and why I sometimes use those songs is then YouTube won't ding me and try to sell an ad because I used someone's commercially released material. So I don't think it's available on streaming services, but Vince did do a solo record maybe 8 years ago or so. But check him out. I mean, he was the touring keyboard player with the Eagles, and he's played with Jimmy Buffett and Bob Dylan and Roseanne Cash and, all sorts of people. Just a wonderful kind of journeyman keyboard player, just a great guy and a wonderful writer as well. All right, so we see, hey, Greg, would be nice if your connections to push Steinberg to allow the Media Bay to be on its own channel where loops with third-party effects can be auditioned would be appreciated. But you could always remember that you could just come over here into, let's say if we're in our control room here. So let's say I wanted to audition with a flanger. I could just come right over here. So let's say, okay. So now every time I want to audition different loops, I could audition through a flanger if I wanted to. So because the control room itself has effects. So always remember that you could control different effects and audition through different effects right here in the control room as well. Okay, so it just says, I know you can't say anything, but when will there be an update for Helix Native? So yeah, I mean, you could check with Line 6 on that to see when, and we see, and they could probably best help you with that. So I'm not sure what their development schedule is, but it seems like there's a lot of amps in there already. And we see how many amps are in the Cubase Amp Rack. So let's take a quick look at it. So there'll be a VST bass amp as well as the VST Amp Rack. But when you come here, let's go to your audio inserts. And it'll be under distortion. So I think there's like 6 different amps. So, or 8 amps or 7 amps and none in a number of different cabinets, as well as different effect pedal options, microphone choices with blend, and then you could also have pre-effects, so different amplifiers, cabinets, microphones, and you could also have master effects if you just want to have a tuner, stuff like that, or an EQ overall. So check that out if you haven't played with it, Kevin. All right. So we just see a question from Jeff Sabelski. Greg, a trumpet clip recorded separately as forte score asks for mezzo forte timbres different at all volumes besides simple volume. Any other way to soften the tone and energy when recorded singly and louder? So, I mean, always what you could do, I don't think I have kind of a orchestral audio file, but if it's something that's, where as a trumpet player, I understand like, where you could, have that be very bright, but you could probably just find that particular, and one of the things that I would do, so you could do it with EQ. And one of the things that's like really helpful if you wanted to find that frequency easily is to use the frequency EQ. So as we would come here, but frequency EQ has this great mode of kind of like a live audition. So let's say as we're playing, you click on this little speaker icon here, and then kind of as you play, as you are adjusting a parameter, you could hear only the settings that you're adjusting. And you could probably find kind of the brighter frequencies and kind of bring that down. And if it's still like, one of the things that you could also do is add like a reverb plugin and adjust the pre-delay. And that could make it sound like it's maybe a little farther back and less upfront. So if you want that to kind of blend a little bit better, I would definitely try that. Okay, so just see follow-up question. When you changed the drum part to MIDI channel 2, the name for the part didn't change right. Even though you hear the percussion agent, you still see the acoustic part name, right? So, if you start with, so the name won't change on the part, but if you added another MIDI track, you could rename the second MIDI track with MIDI channel 2. And at that point, you could just simply, you could see the name, but it's not going to, so it won't necessarily reflect the name of the percussion agent when you do it, but you could obviously add the track and, just simply rename it. All right, so we see from Nick, is the snap still defaulting to on when you change workspaces? Any chance this may change in a future patch? Okay, so let's say I have snap disabled, and I'll save this as a workspace. Okay, and okay, so I'll add a workspace here. Let's make this 2. And let's add a workspace here again. Okay, so our snap is still turned off. Let's go to workspace 2. So it looks like snap is turned on. And let's turn it off and see if we go to workspace 3. So it looks like that still happens. I'll go ahead and make a note to mention that to the developers. Sorry about that. It's kind of annoying. Okay, so we'll see Michael Pierce, his student just logged on. We see Sable Winters is missing Pablo. So Pablo was on, he made it towards the end of last live stream. So, and see Gareth, he's not on yet, but he was on the last live stream. So hopefully he'll make it soon. All right, so we see Mark Grabian's getting his vocal takes together, so that's great. And we see Gerald just saying he likes that frequency EQ tip, got something to use that on. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and paste the Zoom meetup one more time. Be doing that. I know we had some questions that were sent in, so let me get to those before we run out of time. Okay, so bear with me just for a second. Thanks for all the questions. If you learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. All right, so we have a question mailed in. I have enable solo on selected track on in preferences. So if I solo a track and then select a different track, the new track will be soloed and the first track will be muted. All good. But if I solo a track and then select a group track, the first track will still be in solo together with the group track. The group track does not mute unsolo the first track. Does this feature not work for group tracks? All right, so let's take a look. You may have to use a VCA for this. Let's take a quick look at it. All right, so let's say just activate this project. All right, so say I have my kick. So say I have the preference enabled. So I have my kick soloed. I go to my snare, that solos. And we see that since the audio is going out to the group channel, now if I select the group channel, that may not carry over and unmute that. But if we have these routed to, let's say, a VCA, let's try this. So let's say I have my kick and I have that soloed. All right, so now if I want to solo the VCA fader, that will bring all the different tracks together. So we can think of the group as always going to be summing. So if you wanted to be able to, just choose to and we could have these routed to a group track and to the VCA track simultaneously. So try routing it to a VCA track and see how that, I think that will do the trick for you. Okay, we had a question, how to freeze multiple tracks at once. All right, so let's say if we have kind of like an orchestral thing that we want it to freeze, or even if we wanted to come over here and I wanted to, freeze multiple tracks. This is kind of a long standing feature request, and this was actually introduced in version 12.01. So now all you had to do is just come over here and we could select your tracks and right click, and we will see, I think it's, just make sure there's no event selected. thought it was in there. So yeah, okay, so we could just freeze, unfreeze. So at this point, we could just, as we would select the different events here, you can now just choose to freeze, unfreeze, like selected tracks, or so just go to freeze, unfreeze right there from the edit menu. That's how you could do it. All right, so we had a question, and I think this is from RVO from last week, whose questions weren't getting on the stream, weren't getting in the chat field. So this question, when I import a MIDI file into an instrument track, the name of the MIDI file automatically changes to the track name. As I want to keep track on the MIDI files I used, I would like to turn off that somehow. So generally, I think, like, let's say if we do a new project, and I will just come over here and let's call this, and I want to import a MIDI file. We won't create a new project, so I think I downloaded one today. So we'll call this Enigma. So when we come here, okay, so we could see like the Enigma variation. So this is like the name of the MIDI file. And as we come over here, we can see that. So and if we have these set to, let's go to my preferences here. And I just wanted to set the import MIDI file into, let's say, instrument tracks. So let's go ahead and let's say I'm going to just call this track piano, and we'll just test to see. So I want to export this as a standard MIDI file. So it could be that that's just extracting the name from the metadata. And I'll just see if that makes any difference there. All right, so now I want to import MIDI file. We'll create a new project, and this will be our AA Enigma. We'll see if it carries the name over. So at that point, it just imported the name from the MIDI file. So it's going to replace, the name of the particular instrument, I think. And it's just how like the MIDI file information is carried over. So I don't know of a way to have Cubase ignore the name of the particular track, which is something a lot of people wouldn't want to do. But if you see like in this previous example, when we come over here, we can see like it would say, Enigma Variations by Sir Edward Elgar, Robert Finley piano, whatever. And all that information is just specifically inputted by probably the creator of the MIDI file. So it could be that, whatever name the MIDI file is, but I don't think there's a way by default to change that particular naming scheme. Is just going to actually get it directly from the MIDI file. Okay, so we had a question. After a day's work on a song, I usually use Backup Project, which of course creates massive amounts of data redundancy. Save as would work, but I need the newly composed audio and Midi files to be judiciously backed up along with newly noted song version name. Example 01, 02, 03, etc. I'm thinking it will be in this single project folder. What is your advice? There must be a more economical way. So, what you could do, if you're careful with all of your audio files, all of your files will be, it's perfectly fine to have multiple files within your project folder. When you would do a backup project, is often like if you're like looking for archival purposes where, okay, I want to take this and archive it. And a backup project will take all the files that are in that project and duplicate them into a kind of a separate, often safe, unified folder when you're doing that. So if you're careful with recording all the files into the folder, you don't necessarily have to duplicate the audio files out. And what I would do is, when you do the file, there's a save as. So that's where you could do your my project.01, my project.02. So you could do incremental saves, or you could just choose to do a save new version, and that would automatically add like a 01, 02, 03, 04 to the project. So you don't have to do that. I would only do the backup project when you're actually archiving everything together. So, okay, and I think this is from John Costigan. If you could send me any or all of your accumulated the logical editor, project logical editor presets that I've made or collected, would be great workflow improvement. So I'll put those together. Maybe I could put them up into a folder that could be accessed by many people, so other people could have access to all of them as well. All right, so let's jump back. And again, if you've learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. All right. All right, and we're gonna be going over in about 10 minutes to our Zoom meetup. And if you haven't done this before, it's always a wonderful way to get to meet new people and see people that you may hear their names in the live streams and read their comments. So sorry, hit wrong keyboard for the wrong computer. All right. All right, so real quick, does freezing a track unload the plugins from processing and CPU usage? Yes, that's one of the main intentions of freezing. All right. So we see question, my audio inputs, outputs, control room settings keep getting reset after I set them up to be the default. I'm using AXR4 in a Mac, but not sure what is going on. So sometimes when you start an audio program on Mac and you're using Core Audio, if it sees that it's connected, and this is an annoying thing, and I had a big discussion with Berkeley Music about this with their labs, and they're just kind of commenting that if you have like an HDMI monitor out, Apple, as you kind of work with the Mac OS, it will automatically try to, anytime that you're sending audio out of something, it tries to get you to send the audio out of the HDMI output. And that's why you may see, select your audio interface. The operating system is trying to kind of hijack and send everything directly to the HDMI audio output once it sees it's connected, which is often not what you want to do in the DAW. So if you have an HDMI interface, you could maybe reach out to Apple about that. They've heard about it from lots of people. Okay, so we have a question. Is it possible to sync two audio tracks in Cubase 12 so that they beat match, like in DJ Mix, even they have not the same BPM? All right, so let's go ahead and see if we could do something. So yeah, you can put them both into musical mode. So let's, I think I used to have a project that showed this. See what I could do quickly with this. Nothing I could play on YouTube, so. All right, so let's say, okay, let me just find, I may have a baseless hot mess track here. Wrong file, so let me just. Okay, so let's say these are two different tempos going on. So let's say this one is varying in tempo. All right, so what I could do is I'm going to do a tempo detection on both of these files. And this will probably sound awful together, but. Okay, so we're going to do tempo detection. Okay, so we'll listen to this just quickly. Okay, so I have that audio file. And let me do a tempo detection on this file. And let's turn off musical mode for it. Okay, so we have our tempo set for this. So let's say as we're listening to it. Okay, so these are different tempos as we can see. So what I want to do is to select both of the files. And we will put them, go to advanced from the audio menu to set definition from tempo. And now as I wanted to just say, okay, I want this to be, instead of fluctuating tempo, and now when I play this, so whatever tempo that I type in now, both will just kind of follow the particular tempo. So as we listen to this, So you could just do a tempo detection of each file and then put it into and then go to set definition from tempo for both of the files, and then whatever tempo you type into Cubase, it will match those particular files for you. All right, so we're right at 3 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and migrate over to the Zoom meeting. So I'll go ahead and post the Zoom meetup. If everyone wants to migrate over. And if you learned something new, make sure you do hit the like button. And we'll start Zoom here. All right, so we see Mark Rabin on. We'll just... All right, hey Mark, good to see you.
You too. How you doing?
Good. All right. Get some more people logged in.
Eating this guacamole. It's tasting good.
I see Nick. I see Benny, Marcos, Kevin. All right. Jan.
Hey guys.
Hey Nick. All right, there's Luca.
You look like the guy Cubase on the Cubase website. Luca.
All right. And I'm going to just put up like the meeting details here real quick. So all right, so we have more people joining. All right.
Greg, I said in the comments, you're actually a real person.
I hope so. Yeah. All right, let me just go sneak over to...
I noticed, Greg, they updated the headbrush tuner. Are they going to update the tuner?
Is there... Yeah.
Switched on the headbrush from Midi tuner to use.
Yeah. All right, we have Jeff Zabelski joining.
Maybe you can mention that to developers so they can make it a little easier to use.
All right. I'll mention it, Kevin. All right. Are you having a hard time with the tuner, Kevin?
Well, yeah, I was. All my tuners, I was having a hard time.
All right.
Hello.
All right.
Hello, sir.
Hey, Michael Teams. All right.
Sorry for about my background. Let me
You look like you're on CBS, sir, with that like that.
yeah. I've been using other applications
All right.
like
All right. All right. We see David Ems joining us, as well as Neil Conway.
I've been
And
using other applications like Bitwig Studio and the like, Bitwig Studio and Logic, but I decided to demo Cubase, and I've kind of had some interesting experiences with Cubase, but also as well as having some questions.
okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream part. Bear with me just for a second.
I